Kingdom Hearts. Just the name probably brings up fond memories from your childhood from those who played it. And how could it not, as it combined Disney and elements from Final Fantasy into an action RPG. Today, people look back on this game with fondness and praise, but does this game really hold up, or is it overrated? So the story of this game is that Maleficent and the other Disney villains are teaming up in order to steal the 7 princesses, who are pure of heart, in order to open up Kingdom Hearts, which supposedly holds some great power. It sounds stupid, and quite frankly it is, but that being said, Sora's main motivator isn't to stop Maleficent from opening Kingdom Hearts. His main goal is to find Kairi and Riku. All of the extra hero bullshit just sort of happens while he's searching for his friends. This, however, is the main problem with the story, as Sora's motivator really wasn't mine, because quite frankly I didn't give 2 shits about Riku or Kairi. First off, Riku is an asshole. Everything Riku does in this game is incredibly misguided and selfish, and really doesn't make him a likable character at all. Yeah, I get that he has a prepubescent boner for Kairi, and that everything he does is to try and save her, but still, the fact that he's willing to just be a colossal douche to anyone who isn't out to help him, makes him really unlikable. As for Kairi, the game really never gives you a reason as to why she's so special. I get that Sora and Riku both like her, but a reason's never given for why the player should like her. If the game really wanted to give the players a more compelling reason as to why we should care about finding them, then the opening of the game should have showed Sora, Riku, and Kairi just hanging out and being chummy. Maybe give a little backstory on how they met, something instead of introducing the characters and saying how they were planning to sail away together to some nondescript place. There are several flashbacks in the game that show Sora, Riku, and Kairi when they were younger, but they add absolutely nothing to the characterization of them, or expanding on their relationship. The game starts with a little 10-minute tutorial where you decide what area you want to specialize in, strength, defense, or magic, and what remaining area you want to give up, which will determine the kind of skills you get as well as your stats. You'll also be asked 3 questions which will determine how fast you level up. Of course, the game doesn't tell you this, so you can end up fucking yourself over and making the game harder for yourself without knowing it. Besides that, the tutorial will also teach you the basics of combat. After the tutorial, you'll spend the next hour to 45 minutes being Riku and Kairi's bitch, as they make you collect supplies as well as provisions for the raft. I mean, what the fuck are they doing when you are collecting all this shit? What sucks about this part is that you kinda just wander around aimlessly for everything, since there's no indication of where to go, and you can't even ask Kairi or Riku to point you in the right direction. Not only that, I don't really understand why the tutorial and this island bullshit weren't combined into one thing, where looking for supplies would teach you the basics of the game. For an action RPG, there's a surprisingly large amount of platforming in this game. What's even more surprising is how shitty it is. Sora's movement in the air is floaty and sporadic, but at the same time he feels really heavy and drops like a sack of shit when he's falling. Platforming does become easier once you unlock the high jump and glide abilities, but until then you kinda just have to suffer with missing jumps. And what's really bad in this game is that missing a jump and falling into a pit doesn't just restart you where you were before your jump. You usually fall down to another area, so you have to make your way all the way back up to where you were just to reattempt the jump again. Although this game is classified as an action RPG, it feels just like a button masher. Combat is basically simplified down to just spamming the X button to attack, as enemies are relentless in their attacks. It's next to impossible to use items or magic without getting attacked, which is especially frustrating when you're one hit away from death, and there's little to no time to heal yourself before an enemy kills you. And you'll constantly die in this game, even if you have half your health left. Out of nowhere you'll get hit with an attack and then die instantly. And if you thought the regular combat was bad, magic is completely useless in this game. The only 2 spells you'll probably use are Arrow and Cure. Other than that, there's no point in using magic. Other spells will just drain your pathetic magic meter, and then when you need to heal yourself, you'll be royally screwed. It's complete bullshit how much Cure and Arrow cost, considering how few magic segments you get. Most people will probably be working with 6 or 7 bars, and you'll be casting spells faster than you can build up the magic to use more spells. Speaking of enemies tend to just spawn out of nowhere, and after you defeat one group of enemies, another pops up. In most RPGs, when you fight a group of enemies, more don't just show up in the same spot to take their place. So instead of just fighting one group of 4 enemies, usually 2 to 3 more groups would show up, making any fight needlessly long and exhausting. Because of this, most of the time whenever possible, I would just try to completely avoid fighting anyone. The enemy placement is also fucking terrible, as enemies spawn when you're standing on a small platform, so your only options are to let the enemies attack you, and let your partners handle them, which takes forever, or try to attack them yourself and fall off the edge and have to climb all the way back up to where you were. It's even more annoying when you're on a ledge with a treasure chest, and you can't even open the fucking thing, because there are enemies in the area, even if none of them are attacking you. Even if you do clear an area of all enemies, if you leave and go 1 or 2 screens over and come back, all of the enemies end up showing back up, which is extremely annoying considering that there is so much backtracking in this game. I also noticed that a lot of enemies had this ability where they can disappear and reappear, which was incredibly annoying when I was 1 hit away from killing an enemy, and they would teleport farther away from me. Enemies also seem to be way more agile than I was, and would tend to have a much easier time bum rushing me, and getting behind me, while I struggled to even run up to them and attack them. It also didn't help that the Keyblade had a huge fucking delay when I missed an attack, or at the end of a combo, which usually left me open to getting hit by enemies. If you thought the enemies were unfair in this game, the bosses are even worse. For most of the bosses, you're constantly being attacked either by them or by the endless waves of enemies they summon. And for some reason, it's next to impossible to dodge their attacks and attack them. So basically, you just have to take damage, attack, and then retreat to heal yourself. Of course, even that's not enough, as most of the time you'll randomly get killed. Most of the time when I died in a boss battle, the attack would come out of nowhere and it would be impossible to dodge. What makes it even worse is that every time you die and have to fight a boss again, you have to sit through the pre-boss cutscene, as there's no way to skip them. As I mentioned earlier, there's a serious lack of direction in this game. Most of the time you just aimlessly wander around a level until you figure out where you need to go, but there aren't any signs or markers that signal you're going in the right direction. Usually when I came to a branching path, I'd always second guess myself as to whether or not I was going the right way, considering there was no indication telling me whether or not I was on the main path or headed to a dead end. I mean, there's not even a fucking map in this game to give an overview of the area. For Christ's sakes, there are maps in racing games. How many times do you need to look at a map in a racing game? Probably not too often, but they still have them in them, unlike Kingdom Hearts, who thought they were above needing a map. There's also no indication of what you're supposed to do in certain situations. In several cases, I got stuck while playing the game and figured I needed a certain skill or ability before I could advance any further, so I would usually leave the world I was on. In actuality, the game wasn't clear on what I had to do in order to advance, and the only reason I figured out what to do was because I looked at a guide. For example, in Wonderland there's a part with the big tree with a nut on it that shrinks you back down to a smaller size. In order to dislodge the nut, you need to hit the tree. However, in order to advance in the level, you need to hit the tree again in order to spin the tree around to access the opening. Of course, the only way you know that you need to do that would be to randomly hit the tree again. Another area I had trouble in was Olympus. Now when you get there, Phil will tell you to move the stone block. Now my thought process was that since there was a yellow trinity mark in front of it, it meant that I had to wait until I gained the ability to use the yellow trinity before I could move it. Well, basically I beat most of the other worlds in the game and still didn't unlock the yellow trinity. So I looked it up online, and apparently you have to talk to Phil, attempt to push the stone, and talk to Phil again to trigger the cutscene, and then you can enter the Coliseum tournament. I mean, really? You put a fucking trinity mark in front of the stone, and I'm supposed to assume that it's completely unrelated to accessing the Coliseum? And while we're on the subject of shitty design choices, let's talk about all the backtracking. The whole fucking game is pretty much just you going back and forth to parts you've already been to in every fucking stage. The game even makes you go back through a whole world again after you've already went through and did it once. It's really hard to enjoy going through and playing a game when the levels are just so poorly designed and laid out. Continuing the theme of bad design choices, what the fuck is up with these menus? They're a huge pain in the ass to navigate through, and when you get a new item there's no indication what it is besides its name, so you end up sifting through these fucking menus until you find it. Not only that, but the attack menu is so unintuitive. If you don't have a magic power quick selected, don't even bother using it, because chances are you'll get fucking killed before you have the chance to read through the list and pick the spell you want to use. Plus, if you do happen to cast it, going through the menu to cast it again isn't worth the trouble. The same goes for using items, as you're better off giving the items to your partners to use, since going through the menu to take out a potion will probably kill you before you get to even use it. Even then though, the AI is so fucking dumb that by the time you need to be healed, they probably used up all the potions, or are too busy jerking each other off to use it on you. Now in order to get to the other worlds in the game, you need to use the Gummi Ship. The Gummi Ship segments tend to be long and boring, plus the black holes you run into when traveling aren't marked, which means if you decide to take one, you can be sent back to an area you've already been to. There's also the fact that all the little items you pick up are only used to upgrade your Gummi Ship, which is pointless seeing as how you can easily get by every area with the default Gummi Ship. For most of the game, your two main partners will be Donald and Goofy. However, every world has a character partner from that world that you can use, like Tarzan or the Beast. However, this meant that either Donald or Goofy would be off the team and they would be replaced by that character, which I saw no point in doing considering that you could only use that character in the world they were from. Of course, the bullshit reason they have for not allowing the other characters to join you is that you would be meddling in the affairs of the other worlds. The problem I have with this reasoning is that there are several instances where you intervene in the affairs of the other worlds, like in the beginning of the game when you intervene in Alice's trial. Plus several characters like the Genie and Tinkerbell join you in the form of summons. How is that not meddling? Not only that, but it's not like the Disney villains aren't meddling with the worlds by stealing the princesses and using the Heartless. I think the real reason is that they didn't want to have to create new models for the other characters in Atlantica or Halloween Town, so they came up with some bullshit excuse as to why they couldn't come with you. There really are no words to describe how atrocious and broken the camera is in this game. First off, instead of controlling the camera normally with the right control stick, you control it using the L2 and R2 buttons. Because of this, the camera is slow to pan and annoying the angle properly considering you can't move it up or down. Second, even though there are two camera options, manual and automatic, they both seemingly mean the same thing, as you usually have to adjust the camera yourself. Although the main difference between the two being that automatic decides that sometimes it wants you to focus on some completely and random arbitrary spot. So now the big question is this game overrated? Well, yeah it is. Didn't you just hear me bitch about this game for 10 minutes? As I said before, there's a lot of design flaws with this game, and its level design, controls, menus, and camera that make this game feel very unfair at times. Not only that, but as far as the story and characters go, the characters are not very likable, and I can't say that I was motivated in the same way that Sora was. Now I know some of you are probably saying that if this game is so bad, then why do so many people like it? Well, the short answer is nostalgia. I'm sure many people watched Disney movies when they were younger, and this game pulls a lot from Disney in its characters and stages. And you know what? It is a cool concept. Playing with Donald and Goofy and traveling to other Disney locales in an RPG, it sounds like the coolest concept ever. And I'm sure a lot of people really wanted this game to be better than what it was, hence all the praise for this game. However, the truth of the matter is that this game really isn't up to snuff. There are better RPGs than this, there are even better action RPGs, making this game really overrated.